I'm making this video because a system as we know it to be called fair is not fair at all. On Friday, mayor candidate Frederick was denied his due process, was denied his constitutional right, and violated the freedom of choice for the voters of Chicago. What started out as a process to change turned into intimidation and fear of someone else outside the political arena coming in and scooping a seat. What happened to the freedom of making the decision to run, to make change, and to be that change that is so desperately needed? As we know, crime in Chicago is at an all-time high. Presently, we have a mayor who has sold out quite a few things, Section 8 properties, just a bunch of different things. Downtown Chicago is no longer the same. She allowed businesses to leave that was very viable to the financial status of the city. She brought in an inexperienced police sergeant from another state that did not understand the dynamics of protection and law and order. Going into running a campaign, you stand on the outside looking in, and a lot of things you are not aware of. But once you get on the inside and you see the trickery, the lies, the manipulations, and the deceit in being a part of a campaign, when you go in thinking that transparency and fairness would take place, but you later find out that those in position use their status and their power to divert the process. Mr. Collins was sabotaged. He was railroaded by the hearing officer, Rodney Stewart, and the Board of Elections ignored the rules that's on the books that you are required to do a FOIA if you're going to challenge somebody, to show that you actually took the time to look at the signatures, that you should not depend on a preliminary report. And it was not reported that the objectors team showed up one day out of the week. So how can you adamantly, without doubt and reassurance, say that the signatures that you say were actually not signatures when you didn't look at signatures, you looked at addresses? And in looking at those addresses, you manipulated the process enough that made it fall short of the 12,500 that was needed intentionally. That is sabotage. That is intentional sabotage. And for me, when Mr. Collins left a very important meeting at the Union facility, Brandon Johnson was present. And he left out like the backside of him was on fire. So you put two and two together. Who would be that desperate to kick somebody off the ballot? It would be Tony Pretwinkle and Brandon Johnson. CTU heads did not want to support, and we wonder why our school systems are the way they are. This is the reasons why. Now, you should ask yourself the question, Brandon Johnson has gained the seat of commissioner, and what has he really done in that seat? Tony Pretwinkle was laying low, but it seems that our elected officials are not concerned about the constituents and their needs. They're more concerned about filling their pockets. The challenger, Andre Holland, is already in trouble in foreclosure, so I'm sure the money that was given him was the right string to dangle to try to save his premises. And as well as he's a professional challenger. Now, here is where things don't line up. Petitions that are supposed to be filled out properly, the name, the office running, notaries, the appendix, the section E should be properly filled out, was not. It was scratched. There were sheets that had F. Collins. There were sheets that didn't have a name or the name of the office. There was no Rule 8. There was no good faith hearing. Rodney Stewart did not allow the candidate to present any evidence. There was sidebar conversation with Attorney Fine on the challenger's side. But if Andre Holland is struggling to pay for his house and his mortgage, he's in foreclosure, who then paid for Attorney Fine is the question that really needs to be asked. Now, for me, I'm an advocate for voting, but I'm also an advocate for right. And these wrongs need to be right. And like I said to the team, this is not something that is new. This is something that has been going on for a long period of time. It didn't just start. My friend said it's politics instead of politics. And this round, it shows that it's politics instead of politics. When people are fearful of the underdog, they will do everything they can to pull the rug and then move the ladder so you can't step any further. Now, who else could be a part of the railroading and the sabotage? So then you come up with the question, do we trust our system? Is it trustworthy? And for me, the answer is no. If the Board of Elections disregard their rules that they put together and set up to be followed, and they don't address their rules as being law, then there's something wrong with that. When you don't allow people to present evidence that can change the course or the dynamics of the situation, there is a problem with that. When attorneys sit on the side of wrong and try to make it right, I have a problem with that. Rodney Stewart did not follow the guidelines, but if you look at Rodney Stewart, he sits on a lot of things that's connected to Toni Preckwinkle. And we know she's the Cook County Board President. So for me, to sugarcoat, to hide, to cover up, and to say that it don't matter when it do, it does matter. The path that we take when we're talking about railroading and sabotage. But what I've said today, and I'll say tomorrow, be careful of the ditch you dig for others, because the very hole you dig for somebody else may be the very hole you fall in for yourself. Now, Mr. Collins was wrongfully shoved off the ballot. And as we look and we understand, Paul Valance right now is using everything that's on Frederick Collins' website to present his platform that he didn't have at first. So you can copy what somebody do. You can repeat what they say. But if it's not your plan, you can't institute it and you can't push it through because it's not your plan. And for those who are voting, know that they're playing with your voting rights. They're playing with your decisions of choice. Now the petitions, if you would go back and look, says nomination. Why do you need petitions for anybody to run an office? Because the bottom line is the voters are going to be the deciding factor who they want to sit in the seat. So then you come up with another question and answer. Will the city of Chicago be better? Will it be worse? Well, for me, it's going to be worse, because those who are on the ballot to run for the seat will not make the difference that is needed. They won't. They are going to continue the process of filling their pockets. They're not going to address the schools. They're not going to address CTA. They're not going to address red light cameras. They're not going to address high taxes. They're not going to address the homeless. They're not going to address crime. Paul Valance has cases as it relates to public schools right now that needs to be looked at. And before you cast your vote for Paul Valance and his number, you need to look at that. And the rest of the candidates that is running for office, when did you hear about them? And they sit in office. So what impact have they truly made? Because if you're really, truly good and you really care about your community and the needs of the people, the evidence will speak for itself. Brandon Johnson has won another term, and for me, There's no difference. The communities are no better. And even with Tony Preckwinkle being on the back burner of things, Cook County Jail is still the same. Racism still exists. Black and brown are still the majority that is incarcerated. And again, crime has not depleted. Matter of fact, it has increased. When we see carjackings, robberies, break-ins in daytime, you know that's a problem. When business owners don't feel safe, and when senior citizens are not protected, schools are not up to par to be competitive with other schools or other states, that's a problem. So your freedom of choice to pick who you want to sit in that seat has now been snatched. All the crooks are on the ballot. And the person who most likely will have been genuine to make the change, they unanimously and wrongfully removed him from the ballot and then try to justify it. Now, I am going to be making multiple videos, and I am going to be presenting some truth, some paperwork to back it up. Here is the other part to it. When you start exposing some things, things start to happen, people start to disappear and all this stuff. But you can do that. It's okay. It only proves that what I'm saying is true. And if Brandon Johnson and the rest of the candidates was not fearful of Frederick Collins, you would have let him stay. But it brings me back to the crabs in the barrel syndrome. We are the only race of people who spend all the money to push another person out of something, thinking that we are the better candidate. It's just like the house nigga in the field nigga. It's a different type of slavery. It's a different type of locking up, but it's still enslavement when it comes down and it boils down to it. It doesn't take away what has been done. The other part to this is the media will report things when they desperately go wrong, but it seems that some emails that I've sent has disappeared. Some information that I have sent out has disappeared. So that means that some people have long reach to keep the information from being exposed. But there comes a time in our lives that we can't care about how people do what they do. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And exposure needs to happen. Again, the Board of Elections did not follow their own rules. They negated every rule they have set up. So I say to the Board of Elections, they need to be dismantled. You don't serve no true purpose. And I'm sure there's more than Frederick Collins who have been subject to the sabotage and the railroading. Aldermen, other candidates from prior years have been railroaded by hearing officers and justified and bagged up by the Board of Elections in the Rule 20 hearings. Rule 20 hearings are just like after the discoveries are over with and you go to court and then you have the jury and you listen to all the evidence. But how can you make a conscious and fair decision when you don't have all the evidence? And neither did you pay attention to the evidence. And lastly, you did not care. So, as many commercials as the candidates for mayor will be running, there will be just as many commercials I will be running with them as well. Things need to change, and we need to wake up and understand that. And I'm on a mission. I'm definitely on a mission. I will be tweeting, I will be making videos, and some even be live streaming. All right? So I don't trust Brandon Johnson to be a good fit for the candidacy of mayor. And even though Frederick Collins decided not to write in, my suggestion is every constituent, every registered voter, when you go to the poll, write the name Frederick Collins. Write him in. We want to show them that we the people are who we the people are, and our voice do matter. And I'll be talking to you soon. Talk soon.